Okay, guys, here we go. Part 3. We're going to start with the Korean War. Now, the Korean War was 1950 to 1953. Think of that. That's only 5 years after World War II. And unfortunately for the Korean War, it's called the Forgotten War. So many people don't even know about it or have forgotten it. And my dad was just about to go when it stopped in 53. Most people, in fact, a TV show called MASH was a famous TV show here, and a lot of Americans thought that was for the Vietnam War, but no, that was the Korean War. If you've ever seen MASH, that was not the Vietnam War in the 60s and 70s. That it was the Korean War in the 50s. What happened was communist North Korea invades South Korea. Remember the Truman Doctrine. Here it is. We have to contain communism, stop the spread of communism. So now North Korea, which is communist, invades South Korea. We got to follow that Truman Doctrine. We can't let that happen. And this was the first time that NATO fights. First time that United Nations, this should be UN, should not be an N. First time that the United Nations fights. Remember with those light blue helmets? Okay, so let's go on over here for a second so I can explain it. For your times 10 notes, put down the 38th parallel right here. That's this line here. 38th parallel. Here's North Korea, communist. Here's South Korea, controlled by America. This is kind of how it was divided up after World War II, after Japan had to give it up. And remember, Korea is between Japan over here and China. Very important, okay? So the communist North Koreans come down into South Korea. President Truman had already established we're not going to let that happen, so we have to fight, basically. And they get down pretty darn far. So what are we going to do? We had a great move. We, with our ships, attacked North Korea here, which brought them back. In fact, we were doing so well, we were going up, up, up. General Douglas MacArthur, big hero from World War II, he wanted to go into China because we found out that the Chinese were helping the North Koreans and even fighting for them. So the famous request by General MacArthur, President Truman, give me 6 nuclear bombs and we can take China. What? We're going to have to fight them someday. Let's nuke China. As long as we're here, they've been helping North Korea, so they're our enemy. Let's nuke China, take out China. President Truman said, no, this is not the time for that. We're fighting North Korea, not China. But China is helping the North Koreans. What happened was General MacArthur went behind Truman's back and tried to start getting support from Congress for his idea to nuke China. So guess who got sent home? General MacArthur got fired, basically. He was said, relieved of your duty, come on back to America. And when he came back, Congress gave him a standing ovation. So that was one of the most important things you should know about the Korean War. And basically after that did not happen, it almost became like World War I, not trenches, but just fighting back and forth on the 38th parallel. We'd go up, they'd come down, we'd go up. The last 2 years was a stalemate. So put that for the times 10, guys. Last 2 years was basically a stalemate. All right? And then we ended up surrendering. No, sorry, not surrendering, but we ended up having a ceasefire. So no one really won this war. Okay? Keep that in mind. Nobody really won. It was a tie. And here's a great video about it. The Forgotten War, the Korean War.
In the wake of the Second World War, the United United States and Soviet Union emerged as two global superpowers, each one with a very different idea of what a society should look like. The battle between communism and capitalism would continue for decades, but first boiled over in the Korean Peninsula and East Asia. To better understand the conflict, here are 5 facts you need to know about the Korean War.
38th parallel,
The first
guys.
step in understanding the Korean War is to learn the geography. After Japan's surrender in 1945, the United States took control of the southern half of Korea, while the Soviet Union took the north. They were divided by the 38th parallel, a horizontal line that split
That's the latitude line on the map.
Wasn't it the poet Robert Frost who said good fences make good neighbors? Well, in this case, he would have been wrong. North and South Korea were not too keen on accepting the new line drawn in the sand, and skirmishes between the new neighbors often flared up along the border.
Containment. Truman Doctrine.
Truman were deeply concerned with the spread of communism.
We are united in detesting communist slavery,
which they viewed as a direct threat to American democracy. Truman also wanted to prevent Russia from gaining any more territory.
Remember, Stalin never left.
Korea was the Russians' first step towards world
Stalin never left Eastern Europe.
He believed he had no choice but to stop the North Korean army after they invaded the South in June of 1950. At first, North Korean forces were victorious, driving South Korean and U.S. troops nearly out of the country.
It's a great video.
But with the help of the United Nations, the U.S. forces resupplied and rallied, recapturing the South Korean capital of Seoul in September and crossing the 38th parallel the month after. Korea was a country with freezing winters and broiling summers, making the actual combat miserable for both sides. Disease,
I'll be honest, I'm glad my dad didn't have to go fight. I'm glad it stopped right before he was going to go. I wasn't alive then, but my mom told me. There's MacArthur.
Acceptable outcome for the U.S. President Truman disagreed, but MacArthur was adamant, and after he was caught privately lobbying his views in Congress, Truman relieved him of duty for his insubordination.
MacArthur fired by Truman.
While all this was going down, North Korean forces had driven the UN troops back to the 38th parallel, and by May of 1951, the armies were more or less at a stalemate. For the next 2 years, neither side gained any significant ground, although fighting did continue both on land and in the air. Peace talks started in the summer of 1951, shortly after the start of the stalemate. Negotiations threatened to drag on even longer until President Dwight Eisenhower took office in 1953.
Remember, he was the hero for D-Day, guys.
To end the war. Joseph Stalin, who wanted to keep the war going, died in March of that year. After a few months more of negotiation, the armistice was signed in July, ending the 3+
Armistice, ceasefire.
The Korean War was a relatively short but costly conflict. 36,000 U.S. troops were killed, with over 100,000 wounded. 620,000 soldiers from North and South Korea were killed, but more disturbingly, 1.6 million civilians lost their lives throughout the Korean War.
It's always the civilians now,
The 38th
guys.
parallel still divides the two Koreas today, serving as a demilitarized zone. 4,400 yards of empty space separates the two countries, whose borders are defended by armed troops 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Okay. All right, now let's go over to the next section. Turn it around.
costs add up. Their advertisements,
Turn this
travel
off.
expenses, convention costs.
Okay. So you might be wondering, we said it's kind of like fighting through the kids. You tell your mother, or you tell your father, why didn't the U.S. and the USSR fight directly? We did mention it, right, yesterday. Basically, it's called MAD. Mutually assured destruction. It's called deterrence. Deterrence means you're deterred from doing something. The idea is if the Soviet Union pushed the button on their nukes, they knew we would push the button on our nukes, and we would have a World War III. Destroy. Remember, these nukes are 50 or 100 times more powerful than Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So mutually assured destruction don't do it. Don't do it. We don't want to do it because then they're going to blow us up. Millions and millions dead. Thank goodness it never happened. Mutually assured destruction. See a great video on it here. Hey, Ori.
Sadly, even this mass-killing machine did little to give men pause. In 1870, British author Wilkie Collins wrote, "I begin to believe in only one civilizing influence. The discovery, one of these days, of a destructive agent so terrible that war shall mean annihilation. And men's fears will force them to keep the peace." Such was the hope of the scientists and military leaders who, in 1945, gathered to witness the final test of a weapon that would surely end all wars.
Mutually assured destruction.
The first atomic bomb was almost unearthly in its indiscriminate destructive power, for which there was no practical defense. Hiroshima and Nagasaki smoldered in ruin. Japan
Thank
surrendered.
goodness none
The
have
end of
gone
World
off
War II
since
had
then,
brought
guys.
forth the new standard in military might. And another war, a Cold War, was about to begin.
Called the arms race.
America continued to develop atomic weapons, but was
We've
not
got
alone.
1,000
4
nukes.
years
Well, we've
later,
got
the Soviet Union
1,500.
tested their
Well, we'll
first
get
atomic
2,000
bomb,
nukes.
beginning an arms race that literally shook
Guys,
the
each
earth.
side had
The
over
two superpowers
10,000
evolved
nuclear
a new
warheads.
strategic doctrine
10,000
called
at this
mutually
time.
assured destruction.
Okay? The idea that we're not going to fight against, we're not going to press the button, because if we press the button, they're going to press the button. And if we both press the button, we're in trouble. Okay. So number 11, USSR puts the first satellite in space. We thought we were so much more technologically advanced than the Soviet Union. Oh, look at them. When's the last time anybody bought a Russian car? They're buying German cars. No one buys stuff from Russia. They're so backwards. They didn't even have the Renaissance, and they didn't even go through that. While Europe was going through the Renaissance, Russia was being taken over by the Mongols. Russia is so backwards. That's what we were being told. That's what we were being brainwashed. But guess what? Like I said before, educationally, Russia, musically, artistically, their ballet, their music, their theater, one of the most wonderful cultures in the history of the world, Russia. Maybe I'm a little biased, like I said, because of my wife's family, but I do believe that. So here's the deal. USSR puts the first satellite in space. It started a space race. Uh-oh. Let me use the green. You like that, Adam? It's called a space race. Okay? Who can get into space now? Because it's not like, oh, they put a satellite. No, it's like, oh no, now they can put nuclear weapons on those satellites and shoot them from space. So overnight, guys, basically overnight, we changed our educational system. Adam, I want you to act something out with me. Come on. Come on over here and say, oh, I want to sign up for my high school class. I want to take gym. I want to take lots of gym, and I want to take lots of art. Okay? I'll be your guidance counselor. Welcome, Adam.
Hi.
Thanks for doing this, buddy. You're a trooper. He was right in the middle of having his cereal. Why don't you sit down, Billy? Now, we're going to sign up for your next class. Now, what would you like to take?
Some gym, art.
What are you, a communist? Haven't you heard of Sputnik? We're not letting people take classes like art and stuff anymore. Maybe a little bit, but not a full class. Why are you looking at me like that? We got to take more science and math. What you want those communist Russians to get even more ahead of us? They put it in space. They put a satellite in space. We got to increase our education with science and math so we can catch up to them. Here, math and science. Sign up for that. I don't like math and science.
I don't like math and science.
Well, guess what? You're part of being an American now. Don't you want to defeat the communists? Young man, I'm asking you a question. Do you want to defeat the communists? Sorry. Good job, Adam. Give me a hand, Klaus. Thanks, Adam. You man. Basketball star right here. Watch him in Ontario. What, Adam, what are you going to get your name up on the board for? Like Jake just did.
Points?
How many points?
1,000.
1,000 points. He's going for it, guys. So, all of a sudden, U.S. educational funding got increased. And most subjects, math and science. Put that, guys. Math and science. Another thing is for the space race, for the ×2, we ended up having all kinds of bomb shelters being built. Adam, say, Daddy, why are they building that big hole in the backyard?
Daddy, why are they building the big hole in the backyard?
Say, is it a swimming pool?
Is it a swimming pool?
No, it's not. We're building a bomb shelter. So if the Soviets nuke us with their bombs, we can live underground for 2 or 3 years until the radiation goes away. We're going to have all kinds of food down there. Bomb shelters, guys. So put that right here. A lot of people started building bomb shelters. Okay? Next, JFK and President Kennedy's. JFK, that's President Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, 1960, he won the election. So put that for the ×4. 1960 elected president. He started what he called the New Frontier Program. NASA, the National Aeronautics Space Administration. You got to know that. National Aeronautics Space Administration. Look up aeronautics. Okay? And he made the famous promise, not promise, but our goal. We shall send a man to the moon by the end of the decade. He didn't say decade. Kind of fancy talker from Boston. By the end of the decade. And did we get it, class? Yes, we did. By 1969, Neil Armstrong said, 1 small step for man, 1 giant leap for mankind. Okay? So put that New Frontier Program, help us go into space. And remember, it started because the Sputnik, don't call it Sputnik. Oh, I don't have it written there. The USS puts first satellite into space. Oh, you got to write it down. SPUTNIK. I used to call it Sputnik. But like 3 or 4 years ago, one of my students, I forget his name, his family's from Russia, very nice family, really nice student. I said, and now we're going to talk about Sputnik. And he sat in the back seat, right where you sit. Oh, shoot. I haven't seen you guys for a while. Back seat. He said, Mr. Grady, it's not Sputnik, it's Sputnik. So now I always say Sputnik. That was the name of the satellite. And let's watch it. Don't look at my password. Okay. Here we go. Sputnik terrifies Americans. Watch this one, guys. This is a great one. Everyone was shocked.
My name is John Chambers. I traveled deep into the Amazon
Okay, John.
with my team.
Sorry, I'm not going to listen anymore. It looks good, though. Look at guys.
Sputnik was the first man-made thing that ever floated above our heads in outer space. It didn't do anything but send out innocent radio beeps. But Sputnik was earth-shattering. Not only because it was the first man-made thing in space, but because of the rocket that got it there. And what that
That's
rocket
Khrushchev, the
meant.
new Soviet leader. Stalin died.
Rockets, which have taken Sputnik up, could also carry nuclear weapons in space.
Get that? That's the important part, guys. Those same rockets
We're
can...
using Sputnik to try to scare the United States, scare Americans into the idea that we were all in danger of some Soviet nuclear weapon coming from space.
Remember, the Cold War is about fear and tension.
Sputnik was the 9/11 of our day. People were shocked that Russia had a technology that could do this, and we didn't.
America said, now wait a minute. Russians can't even build a refrigerator. What are they doing putting a Sputnik, a satellite in
Right.
orbit?
When's the last time anyone bought a Russian car?
Americans that we were the dominant power in the world. We had to be. So the idea that our arch enemy, the evil Soviet Empire, could
Remember, we were being brainwashed. They were
just
evil.
devastating. I mean, people were walking around saying, "How can this happen? You know, U.S. is number one. What is this?"
It was only as big as a beach ball, guys. Wasn't that big? A big beach ball.
Ever since the news of Sputnik flashed
See
around
that?
the world,
That's how big it is.
America has been asking questions. What went wrong? How did a nation of backward peasants forge so dramatically
Backward
into race to
peasants.
space?
Have you listened to their music or seen their ballet?
Making people alarmed that a foreign country, especially an enemy country, can do this. And if we fear this, we fear that
Fear,
they have
guys.
something out that majority of the people don't know about.
The Cold War, fear, tension.
Senator Jackson of
Are they going to nuke
describes
us?
the Russian achievement as a devastating blow to the prestige of the United States.
The people of the United States have been humiliated. They're disturbed and they're unhappy. The enemy of ours has outdistanced us.
Russia's getting into space really bothers me.
1957, guys.
We are headed downhill to the status of a second-rate world power.
We need more money for science and math.
Politicians and other leaders were telling Americans that Sputnik revealed that we were at great risk.
Not just our pride, but our security is at stake.
Son, no swimming pool. We're going to turn our swimming pool into a shelter.
Let's become factual. Let's start telling the truth. And let's face the fact that we've taken a licking, psychologically at least, and scientifically. And it has embarrassed us throughout the world.
If Russia wins dominance of this completely new area, well, I think the consequences are fairly plain. Probable Soviet...
Okay, you get the idea, right? Sputnik changed America. All right. Now, next one, number 12. JFK's Bay of Pigs invasion. Now, Kennedy's only been president now, not very long. Swear in, what is it, January. Now by April, so only 6 months. He did not even want this at the beginning. You should know that Cuba's being taken over by Fidel Castro. Who's being given weapons and helped by Khrushchev, the new leader of the Soviet Union. So think of that. Fidel Castro's taken over Cuba. Cuba's only 90 miles from the U.S. in Florida. Guess what they do? They start putting nuclear missiles in Cuba. Okay? That's coming in a little bit later. Cuban Missile Crisis. All right? But we were afraid they were going to do that. So what we did, we tried to kill him. First, we gave him an exploding cigar. We sent him a cigar. Unfortunately, it didn't work. I don't know if it blew somebody else's head off. We also he liked to do scuba diving. So guess what we did? Our CIA put poison in sent him a rubber where, what are they called? Where you go underwater, scuba divers, they use their uniform. Oxygen. No, the whole thing that you put on. A suit. Scuba diver's suit. We had poison all inside to kill him, go through his skin, but that didn't work. We even hired a prostitute. He was, to go into his room and kill him with the ice pick. That didn't work. So we tried to kill this guy so many times, it didn't work. So finally we're going to, you know what? We're going to just invade it. We're going to invade Cuba. We're going to make the people think that they're Nicaraguan, not American. What we did, we went to Miami. We got a bunch of people that hated Castro, agreed they would go and fight against him. But unfortunately, the Cuban people didn't help us when we got there. They didn't give us any support. They didn't mind Castro. They didn't even know about the invasion. The invasion was a major disaster. Kennedy looked like a weak, bad president. It was a failure. The Bay of Pigs invasion made Castro even more popular because he stood up to the Americans. Okay? 90 miles. Okay, so Bay of Pigs invasion. You got to know that. Once again, tension between the Soviet Union. Are we fighting directly? No. Because we don't want nuclear war. We don't want to have mutually assured destruction. We don't want destruction. So we fight through the kids. Cuba's the kid. Khrushchev, the leader of the Soviet Union, helps Castro. We don't want that. So we're going to try to get rid of him. We're fighting through the children, not directly. We're fighting through Cuba, like we fought through Korea, like we're going to fight through Vietnam. You got it, everybody? Very important. Okay, let's see a great video on it. Oh, wait, let's see this too. Sorry. Let's go back. I want you to see this. Everyone should know this.
Dr. Squatch is the best smelling, best feeling soap on the planet. Get ready to step out of the shower feeling...
Okay, buddy.
Houston, this is Neil.
This is really great.
Neil, this is Houston. Loud and clear. Break, break. Buzz, this is Houston.
Houston, why do you think it's called the Houston Rockets, guys?
Roger.
Houston Rockets. We used to have rockets go from there. There we go.
That's a good picture, huh? There's a great deal of contrast in it, and currently it's upside down on our monitor. But
Neil Armstrong, the lucky astronaut that became famous, he got, I don't know if they drew straws or how they decided who's going to go out first. There we got a better picture coming up. Live from the moon.
There's a foot coming down. There he is. There's a foot coming down the steps.
Foot coming down the steps.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Don't be fooled by these conspiracy theorists. That's a... This never happened. This was just fake. Look, there's not shadows and all this stuff. Come on, guys. People make so much money off these conspiracy theories. Don't fall for it.
In that first step, you must be stepping down on the moon at this point. 10.
Buzz, this is Houston. F2, 1/160th second.
Come on, sit down. Stand up. There we go. It's a better picture.
1 or 2 inches.
There he is. See you guys?
The surface appears to be very, very fine grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. Ground mass is very fine.
Boy, look at those pictures. Wow.
Is that amazing, guys?
It's a little shadowy, but...
Armstrong on the moon.
Shadow of the lunar module.
This is because of JFK's New Frontier program. That'll be on the test.
38-year-old American standing on the surface of the moon on this July 20th, 1969.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Okay. Now they would say people, sorry girls, but it was all man, policeman, postman, mailman. Now people. Thank goodness that's changing. All right, the Bay of Pigs. It's a bay in Cuba. Here we go.
You're not a dish. You're a man. Most
Here's this guy again.
washes you rub on your skin. In April of 1962, anti-Castro Cuban exiles staged an invasion at Cuba's Bay of Pigs. The CIA, who was behind the three-day operation, would come to consider it one of the most colossal blunders in their entire history. How bad did it go? Well, let's just say that Che Guevara himself is reputed to have thanked an American government official for enabling it. Today we're going to recount some of the most insane facts about the Bay of Pigs invasion. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. After that, be a good patsy by leaving a comment and letting us know what intelligence operations you would like to hear more about. Okay, now we go to Cuba.
Cuba.
In 1973.
Okay, let's go through this a little bit.
They sought to launch the invasion from Nicaragua. To this end, they approached President and de facto dictator.
So remember, we didn't want people to know we were behind it. We wanted to make it seem like Nicaragua was behind it.
The United Nations, he was reluctant. Determined to get their way, the CIA eventually bribed Somoza into agreeing for the tidy sum of $10 million.
Yeah, give him $10 million, then he'll let us start
the
from
CIA
Nicaragua.
helped quash an attempted coup in Guatemala against pro-U.S. government. They held a great deal of influence there and used the country as a staging grounds for the operation. The American planes that came to support the ground troops during the invasion had been disguised as Cuban planes. This is so